Hello and welcome to Diniz Farms. We're back with another episode of Mercer County, and we're picking up right where we left off last time, smack dab in the middle of corn harvest. And so we've got another full semi here. We finished off this field that we were in, and so we've got a little bit left in the grain cart as well. We're going to go ahead and get this dumped into the dryer so we can start drying this corn. And then we'll run back out here and get going on harvest again. We've got all the corn put into the wet bins here. Looks like that dryer is going to town already. And so we're going to go ahead and I think put this semi right back over here. I think it's going to make the most sense for us to continue to fill along this tree line here. We'll leave it on this end of the field though, rather than trying to back it in here on the other headland for now. So let's actually go ahead and get this combine started off here. We're gonna get a worker to help us out a bit more again today, and that will let us then go empty the corn that's in that grain cart, and hopefully this guy will be back down here and ready to get unloaded here about the same time we've got our grain cart all sorted out. I've been really enjoying this 8530 tractor that Diniz Modding released. It's been working out really well for us on this series. This grain cart, on the other hand, is needing a few small tweaks for my playstyle. I'd like to increase the output here on the auger a little bit. I don't know, honestly, it's just such a short throw for the auger. I feel so uncomfortable being this close to the trucks just to be able to unload, but I think that's more of just a personal play style preference for me. And there we go, we're all emptied out. Looks like we got that front hopper on the semi about half full. So we had a decent amount of corn here in the grain cart, and it looks like our combine is just about to the end rows here. Now, these are some angled rows. I think maybe we might need to hop in the combine and help him figure this out just a little bit. I'm worried he's going to try and turn right back into the same row. Oh, we've got at least one pass here on the shorter rows. This is going to work out perfectly for us. I was worried he was going to have to cut into those long rows a bit awkwardly here, but looks like we're going to be good. And we couldn't have asked for better timing on popping back in here to unload him on the way back down. And just like that, we've made it to the end row here. This guy should be able to make it all the way back up, even though the rows are going to get a little bit longer. And so I'm going to go ahead and just dump this corn as long as we're on the end here. I'm kind of curious if it'll fill up that front hopper at least. And I think the next thing that we need to do is actually start prepping our tillage tool here. We might as well get started on a little bit of fall tillage here in this field. I think the plan is going to be to run this land haul over the cornfields this year. I love the sound on this 9520. It's just sounding pretty good. And I think my plan is today to actually try and see if we can figure out how to do a course play course for this job. Last time we just ran it manually. All right, so we're gonna try and get course play here to do these angled fields for us and see how this works out. I haven't actually used this feature a whole lot yet, but I think it's gonna work out pretty well. I did reduce our headland count down to 3 just because I thought it would work a little bit better. And we're gonna say first headland pass, and off we go. It does look like we're at least plowing on an appropriate angle though. And so hopefully this guy is gonna be able to do his thing. That took us a little bit to play around with on the course play menu. And so our combine is already full. So we gotta get in this grain cart and go, go, go. Looks like we did fill the front hopper though. And we've got just a little bit of corn left in our grain cart. And so I'm gonna zip down here and get this combine moving again. It's so awesome to be able to look over to the side and see another implement out in the field with us though. And I think if we just pull ahead here a little bit, the combine will figure out he's got some space, and then we can just unload on the go rather than sitting there at a standstill. We do need to make sure we get him all the way emptied out here as we're starting to pick up these long rows. So we're going to be pulling in a little bit more corn. And as we saw on the other field here, we need to definitely leave enough capacity to make that full round so we don't end up full with the pipe on the inside by the crop. But it looks like we're unloading at a fast enough rate that we should be empty right about the time we get to the end here. Got some weird camera-ness right here as I rotate around the back. Most of my other combines don't do this, so I don't know if that's a function of the combine or this grain cart, but my camera seems to get lost on a regular basis. So we're gonna back up out of the way here, and I'm wondering if this semi is gonna end up being in the way here. I'm not too worried about it, although this plow is making some really good progress here. So maybe we'll top this semi off real quick, and I'll just run this up to the yard and unload it, and then we'll find a better spot to park it so that we're not in the way of our tillage equipment here. Not quite a full load, but we've got a pretty good amount of corn in there, so I'm feeling pretty good about running that up there. And I think we're gonna leave this tractor right here as a placeholder so that when I bring the truck back around, I've got a good idea of how much room I would want to be able to set the semi up. I think we are gonna end up putting the semi in that other field here after all, just to get it out of the way. And we're all dumped into the corn dryer here. If I pull up the menu, we've got 76,000 liters sitting in the wet bins. We've already dried 92,000 liters, which is pretty good. And our propane's still doing pretty good. We can always get some more if we need. But now I think we're gonna take this truck and find a better, more out-of-the-way spot for it here. I'm leaning towards bringing it and parking it right here in this grass spot. I'm gonna destroy this bush, but I think in order to do that, we need to get it turned around. So we're gonna bring it over here and turn it around on this grassy area. Technically, I think this is probably the neighbor's grass field though. Let's see if I can avoid this bush a little bit. I could always back it in here, I suppose, but that seems like a lot of work. And since we're gonna be just taking it right back into the yard, I think this is as good of a place as any to leave the semi. And we better get back into the grain cart here and get going. It looks like our combine is already stopped because we're just running a little bit slow. Looking at the rest of this field, I think we're gonna be able to knock these acres out pretty quickly. Especially as we get over onto these shorter rows here, it's just going to go faster and faster. And this tillage is already making its way back into the middle rows, and that's going a lot faster than I expected. And so we're gonna let that guy just keep going. I wanna go check on this tillage though. It's been a while since we used Courseplay, and you can see here I updated to the latest version of Courseplay. And now it adds these symbols in for the type of work that's going on with the Courseplay drivers, which is really cool. So you've got an indication of what they're doing out in the field now. And then that icon hides when you're actually in said vehicle. So I thought that was a pretty cool touch. The latest version of Courseplay, it's finally on 6.04. And based on the comments, it looks like they are working on trying to submit it to the in-game mod hub for testing. Looks like we're doing a good job with coverage here. Sometimes when you go on the angled rows, I get a little bit concerned with whether or not Courseplay is going to be able to do that correctly, but this is looking good. We went with a 5% angle. I'm wishing I would have gone to the 10% because I would have gotten the angled textures. You can see a couple of spots like to our left here where the plow texture actually looks angled. Multi-terrain angle only has so many angles available to it here, and we're not quite hitting that with a 5% angle on the field. 10% probably would have been a little bit better. You can only go in 5% increments with course play. I wouldn't really need to see that much more variation, especially in farm sim. I think most farmers that I know tend to go for like a 7 to 8%, or 7 to 8 degree, I should be saying, offset when they're plowing. At least that's what I recall from when I was working for one of the farmers that did more typical tillage type activities like this. But like everything else in farming, everybody's a little bit different here. I wouldn't think you'd want to go for much more than 10 to maybe 12% depending on what you're doing. But I think that's why I've seen a lot of farmers do, more like somewhere between 5 and 10%. Because then when you do your spring tillage, seedbed prep, you usually come back at the opposite angle to that, just to mix things up a bit. And it looks like we're finally getting back out here to unload our combine before he's full. And so we're finally realizing that efficiency that we're hoping for with how we've set everything up here in the field. That 9520 on the tillage tool, though, that's still just one of my favorite looking tillage setups right now in Farm Sim. I'm absolutely loving that tractor and plow combination. I know Perma's Modding is still working on a few kinks with the texturing and some other things with the plow. I'm not sure it's been released just yet, but he does have intentions to get it released at some point here. And so definitely head on over to his Facebook page and check that out for progress. He's released a couple of other edits recently as well, such as the changes to the seed tender that we're using in this series to allow it to be filled from the top at bulk buy stations, which would be extremely useful on this series, since we're getting all of our materials from the co-op up here at the bulk buy points. And just like that, we've got another combine load emptied here. I think we are going to just keep unloading into the semi as we're here. We've got the time, and honestly, this grain cart just unloads so slow. I don't mean to keep complaining about it, but it takes twice as long to unload it as it does to fill it up. So if we didn't unload it each round, we'd have a combine sitting still in between the passes when we do eventually get around to unloading it, I think. It looks like our tillage tool is maybe on the last normal pass, and he's going to start making his rounds around the field here shortly. We managed to fill the front hopper already. Still got some corn in here to put into the back. And just like that, it's time to run back down to the end of the field here and catch up with our combine friend. So I think we're going to keep trucking on this field here and see how far we can get today. And I'm just kind of watching this tillage tool with interest to see how it's going to transition from doing the up-down rows to going around on the headlands. It looks like there's still a lot of gaps here in some places, so I'm really curious to see how well it does with the way that it was turning around in the headlands. I'm worried that we're going to leave some spots, and I probably should have configured this guy's settings a little bit differently. If we go into advanced settings, we've got the ability to when to raise implements. I think this should be late, and when to lower should be early. This always seems backwards to me. So I'm going to flip that just so that it's set up for the future. But if we look here, he's taking the inside headland pass right now, and you can see all these areas that we missed because we were not raising or lowering our implement at the appropriate timing. And so I'll have to come back and clean some of this up because courseplay just missed a bit. But right now, we need to get back in our grain cart and keep moving because our combine is getting full. One of the things I like most about this setup is that we've always got something to do, especially right now during harvest. A lot of times when I run smaller farms, I feel like there's big gaps in between jobs, but I think we've got a really good setup on this farm where we've always got a job to do and we've got enough equipment to kind of keep things moving all around. being able to jump back and forth between a little bit of tillage and running the grain cart here with the combine has definitely kept me engaged here through the harvest season. Two things on my wish list here as we sell our crops off during the winter months is to replace our sprayer with something that is a little bit less annoying. I'm just not a big fan of how that one currently works. And we're going to pick up some more fields, I think. This farm is a nice size now, but we do have the equipment, I think, to tackle a few more acres. And so that's the plan. We're going to start looking around the map and trying to figure out where we want to pick up a couple more fields. I'm actually thinking about picking up some fields that aren't quite right next to the farm so that we can get out and move around on the map a little bit. It is a standard size map, so I'm not too worried about spending a lot of time driving and on the roads and such. I think we'll be able to get around this map pretty easily. I mean, if we zoom out here, you know, we've already pretty much covered this quadrant of the map with going to the bulk buy point. So maybe we'll look down here in the bottom half of the map for some of the other fields that we can get. Maybe we'll pick up a few of these smaller fields down here. I don't want to buy the farm, but maybe something like field 18, you know, field 6, 3, 4. These are all good looking fields. So we'll take a look down here as we get through harvest and have a better idea of how much funds we're going to have available to us. But buying another field is definitely high on our to-do list. Looks like our tillage tool is already on his second headland pass. Dust flying, he's covering those acres super fast. And I think that 3 headland passes was perfect for giving him enough room to turn around there. And so I'll have to keep that in mind as we set up the course on this field. I think on this field, we're actually going to try out a 10% angle and see if that ends up looking just a little bit better. We've got a little bit more room to go on an angle here. That's a pretty narrow field, all things considered, so I didn't want it to feel too awkward with too steep of an angle, but we're always learning, doing new things, and it feels like the new version of Courseplay has been pretty stable. I'm sure that's why they felt confident enough to launch it to the mod hub for testing. And with this load of corn, I think we're going to be at a point where we'll have the semi topped off again. And so I'm really curious to run that up to the farm and get an idea of where we're at from a wet bin storage perspective. I think we're going to be getting close to filling up the wet bins, so we might have to move the time scale up a little bit to let the dryer actually move a batch over for us. And I'll be curious to take a quick look and see what our total dry capacity is going to end up at compared to, you know, where we're at with harvest. I think we're about halfway done with this field, considering these are longer rows than the short ones over here. Just thinking about where we're at from a capacity perspective, I'm starting to wonder if we're going to have enough room to put all of our corn in the bins at the moment, which is maybe just a little bit silly given how big those bins actually are and how small our fields are. So we may need to take a better look at the capacity of this bin site before next harvest and make some edits to line these bins up a little bit better with our real life capacity. So we're going to let this unload. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the semi here because I know we're going to fill it up. We're at 99% here, so as we get that topped off here, we're going to run this right up to the grain leg and get it dumped in. Now, coming from this side, we don't have quite as much room to turn around here, but I think that that's not going to be too big of a problem for us. So if we pull up the menu here while we're dumping the corn, you can see that we're filling up the wet bins pretty quick here. We're going to put about 50,000 liters back in here. And now that I look at it, there's a little bit more capacity over here than I thought. For some reason, I thought that this was a lot lower than it is. And so we've got plenty of room to store our whole crop this year. I think we are going to call in and have a full load of propane brought in, though. No reason not to top that off. It's not nearly as expensive as I thought it was. and I just want to make sure that this keeps going and we don't forget about it. So we're getting full on our wet bins here, not completely, but another semi-load here and we will be full. And so at least at the 1x time, we're gonna probably catch up with the corn dryer here at some point, which is fine. I'm probably gonna leave it at 1x. It'll be kind of fun to have actually caught up with the corn dryer. Even if we do catch up, I think we've probably only got about 2 more semi-loads here in the field, and we've got room for at least 1 more semi-load in those wet bins. But our combine is all ready to get unloaded, so we're gonna just stop filling the semi here and get out here, because the rate at which we fill this combine, I'm worried we won't make it in time. And it looks like our tillage tool is just coming up to this end row as well. So I'm expecting we're gonna get an annoying message from Courseplay here at any moment. And we just didn't quite make it here to start unloading in time to keep this combine moving. So we're gonna take the 20% or so out of the top. In fact, I'm gonna back him up. It looks like he pulled forward, and if we start from where we are, we're gonna miss a few rows. So we'll get going with the worker now and unload on the go to the end, and then we'll have to jump back over and figure out what to do with the tillage tool. It looks like he is folding himself up, which would be great, except we've got some tillage that needs to be done. So as soon as we get this combine in a state where he can keep moving, we're gonna jump over there and wrap up that tillage. Looks like I left the semi running. I should probably shut that truck off. I do have the increased fuel usage mod installed, so I don't want to be burning through my diesel. So we'll just shut him down, and then let's hop in here and explain to our worker all the things that they missed on us. So we should be able to just knock these little parts out real quick here. This thing does pull nice and fast. And so at 11 miles an hour, I'm actually, I guess, shouldn't have been surprised that we knocked out all of our tillage that quickly. We're gonna take this right up to the corner from a farm sim perspective. Probably not how I would have tackled this in real life. Probably would have backed up to the corner square and started out there. And we'll just take one more pass here. I guess I'm gonna have to go up to the other end and do a little bit of cleanup up there as well. However, I think we're just gonna finish up this little bit here in the corner. And then I need to jump back in this grain cart and keep things moving. The one downside, I guess, to trying to do a bunch of these jobs myself is that I'm always running around and jumping back and forth between this grain cart. But we are now on the shorter rows for the corn, and so hopefully I will have just a little bit more of a buffer to be able to get up and down here on these rows. He's spending the same amount of time turning around, but we're not quite bringing in as much corn per pass, which should work out just a little bit better for me, but we'll see. I did manage to make it this time, while doing a little bit of tillage in the middle, so I'm feeling like we're keeping on top of things today. Hopefully you've been enjoying this series. I'm curious to hear from you below in the comments what your thoughts are on where we should expand and make changes to this farm in the future. I expect that we're gonna make a pretty good amount of money this year from our crops. We do not have any loan here that we need to pay off, and so all of the money that we make this season is gonna go straight into improvements to the farm of some kind, whether that's equipment or land, hopefully a bit of both. And so I would love to hear from you on what you think the biggest improvement you would make from a equipment purchase perspective is. And then also, if you have preferences on areas of the map that you'd like to see us buy some fields in, feel free to drop those suggestions in the comments as well. That's all for today. Ketterk out. We've got plenty of room in the yard here for turning around and such. Oops. Didn't quite make that turn. Whoa, almost tipped over there.